Yeah, hello.
Hello.
Yes, we can go ahead.
Can you just speak about this?
Hello, my name is Kranti and I have 6.3 years of experience. I have worked on the technologies of Java, J2EE, Spring Boot, Apache Kafka, Apache Camel. And coming to the UI technology, I have experience on Angular 2 plus version. So currently working on Spring Boot in the front end and Angular in the front end, and coming to the back end, we have follow microservices architecture using Spring Boot, and by connecting to DB, we use MyBatis. So this is a technical stack that I have worked on.
How do you rate yourself in Java scale 1 to 10?
I would give a 7.5 to 8.
Can you just say what's the Vita and Hazard?
Sorry, can you repeat the question? I didn't get.
Yeah. Can you just say what is the Vita and Hazard relationship?
Is a and has a relationship you're talking, right?
Yeah.
So if a class is implementing, if a class is A is implementing class B, then class A is a there it follows is a relationship, and if a class is having reference of if it is not extending the class B and it is having a reference of B, then we can then it follows has a relationship. Class A has reference of B.
So how do we achieve this encapsulation in real time?
So coming to achieving encapsulation, we go with private variables and public getters and setters. So in that way we can achieve the encapsulation.
Is the multi-level inheritance possible?
Multi-level?
Yeah.
Yeah, multi-level inheritance is possible in Java.
Okay, multiple inheritance?
Multiple inheritance is not possible.
So what is this tangent problem?
So basically, if a class is extending more than one class, then this problem arrive it will if the same method is there in class B and C, and if class A is extending both the classes, then when we are accessing the same method, then then it creates the ambiguity in which class method should be overridden, which should come into picture here.
So how can you overcome this tangent problem?
This diamond problem, by not extending both the classes, only by extending one class, or by implementing an interface and having a method in that interface and providing its your own concrete method for that, overriding the method and providing our own logic there.
Okay. Do we go for inner classes?
When do we go for inner classes? Scenarios I am not getting, to be honest, right now. When do we go for inner classes? Anonymous inner classes we go for. Right now I'm not getting the reason why we go for inner classes, to be honest.
Okay, just can you what is an inner class?
Inner class is nothing but a class inside a class. Basically it is a nested class also. So what can I say, instead of creating an object and accessing one class, we can directly provide the entire implementation here of that class.
Okay.
So that is known as inner class.
So can we have static variables inside an inner class?
Static variables inside an inner class?
Yeah.
I don't think the inner classes can have static. I know we cannot have, I believe. At least I haven't seen, to be honest, in real time.
If we want to create an employee immutable class, can you say how we can create it?
Employee immutable class. Yes, basically we need to have private variables, and the class should be the final class. Only we should have provide the getters, and settings should be happen through the constructor. Populating those values, initializing those values should happen through constructor. And if at all it is having any class references that, like a class is having another class reference, we need to do a deep cloning there.
Okay. Suppose we have one string s1 is equal to new string of Java. String s2 is equal to new string of Java dot return. And string s3
1 minute, can you repeat? I will note it down. I'm getting confused.
Yeah. We have
string s1 equal to new string of Java. Yeah.
String s2 is equal to new string of Java dot intern.
Okay, dot intern.
Yeah. And string s3 is equal to Java.
Okay.
Now, can you say how many objects will be created in total? We can explain line by line.
So basically, the first time when we are doing string s1 equal to new string of Java, two objects get created. One will be in the string constant pool and one will be on the heap. And when we do s2 equal to new string of Java intern, then we don't create any object there. It will directly look into the string constant pool and it will return the object from there. And when we do s3 equal to normal Java, then also it will return from string constant pool. So basically two objects will get created here.
Now suppose we have one string s2 equal to
can you be a bit louder? I'm breaking, your voice is breaking. Sorry for that.
Yeah. Suppose we have
S equal to
ABC 1 2 3 DEF
ABC 1 2 3 and
DEF
okay
4 5 6. That means it's a combination of alphabet and name.
Okay, combination of alphabets and numerics, right?
Yeah. We want to print only the numerics.
Okay, you just want to print the numerics from the given string. This is only one string, ABC 1 2 3 DEF 4 5 6. Continue. We can do this. We need to first string dot to char array. We need to first get the char array out of this string. Basically by using to char array method, we will get the array of characters, and then we need to iterate that character array. And we have a class called character dot is digit, and we need to pass that each character there. And if it is a digit, then we can print those digits. So basically, is digit will give true only when it is when we are passing a number to it. There is a method inside the character class is digit. So whenever we are iterating over this character array of 1 2 3 ABC and everything, so whenever we are passing 1 to it will return 2, and then we need to print that character there. And if it is false, we don't need to do anything.
Okay. So suppose if you are not using this inbuilt function, which you get is digit alpha.
Sorry.
Suppose if we don't want to use the inbuilt functionality you said use digit. Okay. Then how can we check? Can you give any other alternative logic?
We are not using test this number. So basically we can do this like we should have one more string of 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 0, and when we are iterating over this array, character array, we need to check whether this the string which is having the number string contains this digit or not, like whether this contains that character or not. If that is containing that character, then it is a number.
Can you explain what's the internal hash map?
Internal implementation of hash map.
Yeah.
So like basically hash map works on the principle of hashing. So whenever we pass a key value here, so the hash code will be generated on the key. So based on the hash code, the index gets calculated like internally it will be having a bucket of arrays. So based on the index value, that key key and value gets stored there. So if at all the same hash code is generated for different keys, there comes the picture it will get stored in the same array of the bucket, but linked list comes into the picture there. So it will basically hold that value there. So whenever we are doing a get operation of that key, again the hash code will get generated, the index value will be generated again, and it goes to that index and picks the value from it. If at all we are having a hash collision there, then comes the then the equals method comes into picture. Then we will apply the equals method there, and we'll compare the value there, value of it, and we'll get that value when we return that value.
Okay. So what is the we have object 1 dot hash code is equal to object 2 dot hash code.
Sorry, object 1 dot hash code equal to?
Is equal to object 2 dot hash. Okay. Okay. Suppose if the hash code of the object is equal, then can we say that dot equals is also?
No, we cannot say that, but the vice versa is correct. Like if the two objects are equal, then their hash code must be equal.
Okay. So suppose we have a collection and we are traversing through it. While we are traversing through it, we are trying to modify. That means operate on that collection. So what would happen?
Basically if we are updating, like if at all a list of employees is there, and if we are iterating it, and if we are editing the object just updating a name or ID, nothing will happen. But if we are removing that object while iterating over that list, we will get concurrent modification exception. Like to overcome that, if we don't want that to happen, we should do iterated there. So iterated dot next and iterated dot remove method and next method we should use to iterate it and remove it.
So what is this collision issuing collection?
Collision issuing collection.
Collision. COLLIS.
Yeah, I got it. Collision. Are you talking about hash collision? So basically, like a hash collision occurs when different objects tend to create the same hash code. Like, so that time hash collision will happen. So whenever that happens, like the equals method comes into picture, and it will compare the values in it, like whether what needs to be get picked there.
Can you just say how we can do serialization?
How can we serialize an object, you are saying?
Yeah.
So basically, like we need to implement the serializable interface there to serialize any object, and we should have there is one ID inside it, serialization UID, serial version UID. So if we are having those two things, we can serialize an object. Like basically, we go for serialization whenever we want to send our object over the network, or we want to store the entire object into DB or any on the file system. So we go for serialization at that point.
So suppose we don't want to serialize any one variable or say the class. Then how can we do that?
Don't want to do one.
We want to avoid any class variable get serialized.
There is one keyword. Transient is a keyword. If we declare that variable as a transient, then it won't get serialized there. So using that keyword we can do it, and if at all we are implementing externalizable interface, it provides much control over the serialization of the object. Like it has few methods inside it. I'm not getting the exact method. One method is to serialize the object, where based on our requirement we can serialize only few variables of the class, and there is other method to retrieve that serialized object. But I'm not exactly getting the method names inside that. But there is two ways we can do that.
So, in how many ways can we create a thread?
Thread?
Yeah.
Thread can be created in two ways, like extending the thread class and implementing the runnable interface. And these two ways we can do. And there is one more way, thread executor pool also we can create threads using executor pool.
Okay. We can say
Sorry?
No, we can right.
Yeah, we can do it in three ways actually.
Can we start a thread twice?
No, we cannot start a thread twice.
Why?
Once it is active, we cannot what I can say, it cannot be. There are few life cycle states of the thread. It can be started only once. It cannot be started twice.
Okay. So suppose can we call the run method directly instead of calling state thread.start? Can I call the run method?
We can call the run method directly. It will execute like a normal method only, but not like the way the thread starts it. Like it won't comes into multi-threading concept. It will execute like a normal method only. But when we create a thread class and we pass that runnable interface and we call it using start method, then it will act as a thread there. Then the threading concept will applicable on that method. What is
Thread local?
Thread local?
Yeah.
I am not getting, to be honest, what is thread local.
Do you have idea on executor framework?
Sorry?
Executor framework.
Yeah. Like I have an idea. I have worked on that.
So suppose we have a deadlock. Okay? So how do we analyze and avoid the deadlock situation?
Deadlock situation is basically.
How do we analyze that if there are any deadlocks or check, and if there are any deadlocks, how can we avoid this situation?
Basically, to know the deadlocks, we have something called dumps, thread dumps. So using that, we can know that what are the where all places we can get into deadlock situation.
Yes.
To work commit, basically we should not write code in such a way that it enters into a deadlock situation. But if it entered and how to overcome it, to be honest, I am not aware of that. I don't think we can do that. Like once it is entered into deadlock, it will be in the deadlock state itself. If there is a way to overcome it, while coding itself, we need to take care of all those things.
Have you which version of Java are you working on?
Currently, I'm working on Java 1.8.
So have you used this?
So which thing?
Stream in Java 8 feature?
Streams you're talking?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have used streams.
So, what do you actually do with that feature?
No, your voice is breaking, to be honest.
Okay. So, can you explain that feature? What do you actually?
So basically, in which scenario we have used streaming concept? So basically we were having something scenario was we are having some hundreds of employees. We'll query and we'll get hundreds of employees, and we need to send an SMS to those employees regarding some appointment details. So there we applied streaming concept on that list. Basically we were filtering out all those employees who were not having phone numbers. So there we have applied the streaming concept.
Okay. So what are functional interfaces? What do we execute with that?
So basically functional interfaces are nothing but interface which is having only one method inside it. So those are known as functional interfaces. Typically here we are telling JVM that the classes which are implementing this interface will have some unique functionality only.
Okay.
It is only meant for one purpose only. So for that purpose we use functional interfaces.
Coming to this exception part,
Yeah.
have you did any exception?
Are you asking creating a custom exception? Yeah, I have done that.
So can you just explain the flow of exception?
Creating the custom exception class you're saying, or the exception concept you're saying?
No. Suppose you have given a custom exception. Then how do you write the custom exception and how it is handled or?
So basically, I'll go with the real-time scenario. We have created with a customer validation exception. Basically, we need to extend we have extended the exception class, and then we need to from the constructor of the customer's exception, we need to call the superclass constructor by taking a string input we have created. So the same string input will be passed to the superclass constructor. So whenever we are in the earlier scenario I said that we don't have phone number, we'll filter it out. So basically all those filtered out records will be thrown as a customer validation exception that will be will be printed in the logs.
Okay.
So in that way we can create by extending the thread class and implement by calling the superclass constructor in the constructor. Can you repeat please?
Flow and flow.
I am not getting a...
One second. Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, what's the difference between flow and throws?
Throw and throws you're saying. Oh, so basically these two are keywords. So while we are explicitly throwing some validation, we go with throw keyword. And throws will be used with the method signature. Whenever we are accessing some method, then if we take a real-time example file not found exception, whenever we are dealing with some classes related to opening the file or reading the file, so that classes ask us to handle the exception. Why? Because the method which we are using there in the method signature we say that throws, because that method won't handle the exception. If at all the exception is raised, it will be passed on to the calling object or calling place. So there we need to handle the exception. So there the throws keyword will be used.
So like what is the what do we call this finally block?
Which log?
Finally.
Oh, finally block. Sorry. We basically close all the DB connections or any input streams or out which we have opened there. So any code that needs to be executed irrespective of whether the exception has occurred or not. So those kind of code we will be writing in the finally block.
So coming to this string, can you just explain what is string ending, like the flow from a request to a response?
To be honest, I never worked on Spring MVC.
Sorry?
I haven't worked on Spring MVC anytime.
Okay. You have worked on Spring Boot, right?
Yes, Spring Boot I have worked.
Okay. Like, can we just say in Spring Boot only, how we can construct Spring Boot application in mobile?
Spring Boot application. So basically we need to have Spring Boot starter dependency. So whenever we are having that one dependency, we are it is okay, like it will internally download few other dependencies which is required for setting up an entire project there.
Okay.
So again, based on our requirement, we will go with different dependencies, and like then like what we say, if we are then the class will be annotated, that main from where we need to start. The class will be annotated with the annotation at the Spring Boot application, and inside the main method will run that application. From there the application flow starts.
Okay. So, like, suppose we want like a small simple hello world application. Okay, so can you just say what is the usual configuration of the for that we need to do?
Just to print hello world.
Yeah.
There is no big we don't require anything, to be honest. Like if you are having Spring Boot parent form dependency there, we can directly write the print statement in the main class itself, like in the main method of the like starting class, like where we annotated at the Spring Boot application. In that method itself we can write. So if at all we want to pass it to UI or any other thing, like we want to have a what you can say, a web application, then we need to have a Spring Boot starter web dependency download, like in the form.xml, and we can create one REST application. Whenever the request comes, then we can pass it on. We can pass this response to the request.
What is the Spring actuator?
Spring actuator.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Spring actuator, yeah, Spring actuator. I'm not getting one. Just give me one. Spring actuator. So basically, it has few matrices, like what all methods are getting executed and how much, like a UI display of the application will be there. Like few metrics will be there to check the health. Like if you want to check the health of all the what I can say, APIs, whether all the APIs are up or not, that thing can be done there. What all actuator. And then yeah, right now I'm getting that, but there are few other things that can be done through actuator.
So, like, have you also
Sorry, Spring Boot REST services?
REST web service?
REST web service.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have worked.
Okay. So, like, how did you handle the authentication?
So in our current application, like we have used JWT tokens. So whenever a user logs in for the first time, so based on the user ID and user logged in time, a JWT token will be generated, and we are keeping that in our cache. So with every request, the user needs to send that JWT token. So there are filters which are configured, and firstly that token will be validated whether that is present in our cache or not. Once it is passed that validation, then we will provide the access to our APIs.
Okay. So how can we create customized annotation?
How can we create
Customized annotation.
customized annotations? Look, there is what is that? There are a few things like there is retention type. There are few things, but I haven't created any time. But I know how to create. Like, from long back, I have studied on that. Retention type. Few things will be there that needs to be configured, and then we can create. But to be honest, I'm not getting the exact answer right now.
Like, can you just say what's the query param and path param?
So query param and path param is like query param will come in the key value pair. Path param will come as part of the URL itself. So if at all we are not sending path param, the URL itself will fail. But query param we can send, or it's an optional thing like that.
Okay. And what is accurate controller and accurate rest
@controller and @rest controller. So basically, when we use @rest controller, we don't need to explicitly provide that what is the return type. Like @response body we should use when we are using @controller to say that what is the response type. But if you are using @rest controller, it will be automatically handled. Like whatever the return type is there, it will go as the response.
Like suppose we want the web service to support, like we want to design a web service which supports all the gigabytes of like JSON and the response body. Okay. So how can we design such a website?
So basically, like you're asking, like only one service will be there. It can accept anything.
Yeah. We want to design one service which needs to see XML or JSON or CSS in the response body.
Anything. Anything, I'm not sure, to be honest. Like for specific thing we can have like what is the request type we can mention there, but I'm not I don't know, like for one service handling all the different types of requests.
Can you just mention the response case you have used, static code you have used?
Yeah, different. Like first is 500. Like whenever something is failing at our backend, then we will send 500 like internal server exception. Then 503 is there. Whenever the service is down, we will send that 503, and 200 is like whenever the request and like whenever we have processed the request properly and we are sending the response, we will use 200. We basically have used these three explicitly, but there are few other things also. 404 not found is there. If at all any invalid request is coming, then 404 will be returned. Right now I'm getting these things. There is one thing forbidden also, like if at all this user is not having proper access, 403 I believe we will return 403 forbidden access.
Like how much you are involved in the query part, there are particular queries.
Like to be honest, I know how to write the basic queries by getting data from one or two tables, but in deep I haven't worked on the query side.
So, just suppose you have different queries selected,
Hmm?
but it's taking too long time. So you want to improve performance.
Hmm.
So what are the usual steps to check that?
Like how to fix or like how to check that is taking long time, you're saying?
Yeah, it's taking long time.
Hmm.
Already executed the correct step,
Hmm.
but it's taking long time. You want to decrease the time of execution.
Basically, like recently we have run into same issue. Though, like I know, like we need to implement indexing on one column. That will improve the performance for sure.
Yeah, okay.
But I am not aware like how indexing is applied on that table. Like DBA guy applied that indexing concept.
Now,
So I know that the indexing should be there on the column. So
Right.
retrieve it fast.
so any other tips from your developer side, like that is you are writing your query, right? So from the query point of view and from the developer end, do you have any idea what to check?
Unnecessary joins should not be done. Like if at all we are fetching it by using simple where condition, we should go with that. We should not go for unnecessary subqueries. Like if at all if we can get it through a normal query, then we should go for that again. Like joins and subqueries only will create a delay in the queries, like, basically.
Okay, Johan. Okay, this is nice taking it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.